Okay, this is our daily study of Pirkei Avot, the Mishnah Ethics of the Fathers, in honor of those who have yahrzeit for tonight, the 21st of Av, Etta Clay, Fega Kopekin, Sue Fruhauf, Edward Gross, Yuli Chalemsky, and Shimon Shaw. May their memory be for a blessing. A link to the text of the Mishnah will be in the first comment below. We are up to chapter 6, the last chapter of Pirkei Avot, Mishnah number 1. Before every chapter of Pirkei Avot, you're supposed to read this preamble, which I'm not sure if I've been doing since the first one, but it's the last chapter, so we'll do it again. Kol Yisrael yesh lem chelek l'olam haba, shenemar v'yamech kulam tzadikim l'olam yershu aretz netzer mata'ai ma'aseh adai lihisba'er. All of Israel has a share in the world to come, as it is said, and your branch and your people are all righteous; they shall inherit the land forever. They are the branch of my planting, my handiwork, in which to take pride. Okay, a quote from Isaiah. I always point out this says all of Israel has a share in the world to come. Gentiles also have a share in the world to come, the Talmud says elsewhere. But what seems to be implied by this Mishnah is if you're Jewish, you're sort of born with your share in the world to come. And then the Mishnah ends up clarifying, we kind of cut it off there strategically, but a Jew can lose their share in the world to come. And a Gentile is born and sort of has to earn it by living a good life. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really make much of a difference. But perhaps we say this to comfort ourselves. That's one of the theories in the commentaries, because we're about to study Pirkei Avot, and we might think, oh, I don't live up to these ethical principles. But Jews comfort themselves by saying, don't worry, all of Israel has a share in the world to come. As long as you're trying, as long as you're a good person, um, you have a share in the afterlife. And the proof text that my people will inherit the land forever, well, the plain meaning is that's talking about the land of Israel, but the homiletic meaning is it's talking about the eternal land, meaning the afterlife for the soul. Okay, so the rabbis are masters of homily, teasing out additional meanings of the text. Okay, and then there's another preamble for this chapter. Shanu chachamim bilshon hamishna baruch shebachar bahem uvemishnasam. The sages taught this chapter in the language of the Mishnah. Blessed is he who chose them and their teaching. What does that mean? Well, this chapter was not originally part of Pirkei Avot. So we could say we've already done the accomplishment of finishing the original. A sixth chapter was added later, which was not originally part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah was compiled by Rabbi Judah the Prince, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. All these statements of the rabbis that made it in, some of them didn't make it in. They're called braitas, statements of the Mishnaic rabbis that didn't make it into the final corpus. They're also authoritative. It's not like they didn't make it in because they're not important. They're quoted all over the Talmud. But it's not to get into now, why was that the particular structure of the Mishnah. But at some point, someone realized the original custom was to study Pirkei Avot from Pesach until Shavuos, because on Shavuos we received the Torah, and Derech Eretz Kadmel Torah. The Pirkei Avot itself says that proper ethical conduct is a prerequisite to being worthy of receiving the Torah. So what's the best way to refine your soul to be ready to be worthy of receiving the Torah? By studying Pirkei Avot. So it's a beautiful custom that every Shabbos in between Pesach and Shavuos we prepare to be worthy of the Torah by living up to ethics of the fathers. But at some point someone realized, well, there's 6 weeks between the end. There's 7 weeks from Pesach to Shavuos, so there's 6 weeks between the end of Pesach and Shavuos. And there are 5 chapters of Pirkei Avos. So a 6th chapter was added, culled from statements of the rabbis that didn't make it into the Mishnah, but basically fit right along with Pirkei Avot, ethical statements of the rabbis, and this was tacked on later. Just interesting to see how that all sort of plays out historically. Nowadays, as we're doing, the custom got extended to study Pirkei Avot because there wasn't enough time. We study Pirkei Avot from Pesach all the way to Rosh Hashanah. That's like half the year, pretty much. It's not enough to prepare to receive the Torah on Shavuos. We keep it going. We say, well, now we have to prepare to be worthy for the new year, for Rosh Hashanah. So, and then, some people study it the whole year. I like to joke, it's not prohibited to study Pirkei Avot the rest of the year, but the custom is to formally study it from Pesach all the way to Rosh Hashanah, to be worthy of entering the new year of Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so with that very long preamble, the first Mishnah, Rabbi Meir Omer, Kol ha'osek b'Torah lishma zochel advarim harbe v'lo od ela shekol ha'olam kedai kulo kedai hu lo nikra rea ahu v'hoeves hamakom v'hoeves abrios mesamech hamakom mesamech abrios umalbashto anava v'yira umachsharto lios tzadik chasid yashar v'neman morachto min achet umekaravto li de'eschus v'nenen mimenu Eitza v'sushia bino gvura shenemar li eitza v'tushia ani vino li gvura v'nosenes lo malchus u'mamshala v'chikor din u'megalan lo razei sora v'nasa kamayin hamizgaber Uchenahar she'ena posek v'hove tzanua v'erech ruach u'mochel al bono megadalto moramto al kol hamasim. So these Mishnahs are a little bit longer, and in English. So this chapter is also referred to as Kinyan Torah, the acquisition of Torah, because, and it's fitting that it's the Shabbos before Shavuos. This is studied before you start the cycle again of studying Pirkei Avot, because it's all about the power and importance of Torah study and being worthy of the mantle of Torah. The Rabbi Meir said, "He who occupies himself with Torah for its own sake merits many things. Moreover, he is deserving of the whole world. He is called friend, beloved of God, a lover of God, a lover of mankind, one who gladdens God, one who gladdens mankind. And it clothes him in humility and reverence and trains him to be righteous and pious, upright and faithful. It keeps him far from sin and draws him near to virtue. From him men enjoy good counsel and sound knowledge, understanding and fortitude. As it is written in Proverbs, counsel is mine and sound knowledge. I am understanding and power is mine. It gives him sovereignty and dominion and discernment and judgment. The mysteries of the Torah are revealed to him. He is made like an ever-increasing spring and like a river that never fails. He becomes modest and forbearing and forgiving of insults. It magnifies and elevates him above all things." Really beautiful description of what Torah is supposed to do to someone's character. I say supposed to do, it doesn't always do it. But when it's done right, this is what the Torah scholarship does to someone. And this is excerpts of this are quoted at the eulogies of great rabbis. Let's go back to the beginning. Reb Meir said, "He who occupied himself with Torah for its own sake." That means that's a very important qualification. You can't study Torah because you want it as a means to power or a means to prominence. It has to be for its own sake, and then these things will happen. You're deserving the whole world. The whole world is created for human beings. Adam and Eve come at the end of creation, and the Torah is what perfects a human being. So the entire world was created for someone who has refined characteristics of Torah. He's called a beloved of God, a lover of God, and a lover of mankind, and someone who gladdens God and mankind. That's important, right? You have to be beloved by humans and by God. So you can't just be someone who's pious that, oh, he wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning and studies Torah, but he's a jerk to other people, right? You have to be good to people and pious toward God, and only then are you really living up to Torah. It has to clothe you in humility and reverence. You have to have a good character and be humble. Shouldn't make a person arrogant. Far from sin, near to virtue. That's also like a person never sins. That's wonderful, but you also have to be near to virtue. You have to do good things. This is complicated. It becomes hard to live up to all this. You have to be able to give good advice when you're someone of Torah. And quotes Proverbs that counsel is mine. Wisdom is speaking. Wisdom and Torah itself is speaking in that verse. It gives you sovereignty and power. But once again, the power that's tempered by humility, because people come to you for advice. The mysteries of the Torah are revealed to him. So the Torah, it's understood, has all these sort of mystical secrets. And I think we spoke in a previous mission about the Zohar and the Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic aspects of Torah. Eventually, you'll unlock secrets that no one else has been able to do. And that's why Torah is alive and the process keeps going. And this is a beautiful ending that he's like an ever-increasing spring in a river that never fails. Right? When you're a scholar of Torah, it's not like you rest on your laurels. You're like a spring that keeps increasing and keeps producing new insights. Modest and forbearing and forgiving of insults, and magnifies and elevates him above all things. So elevates him above all things is really powerful. That means, like we said at the beginning, at the outset, I think I see in that the idea of the beginning of Genesis, where Adam and Eve are the end of creation. The human being is the goal of creation. The humans are elevated above all things, but we are refined and perfected by the values of Torah. It's not just enough to be human, congratulations. Well, it is enough to have human dignity, to have Tzelem Elohim, but to live up to human potential, that's where the Torah comes in. So that's my own sort of insight or commentary going back to Genesis. Okay, with that, we'll say the El Maleh. El Maleh Rachamim Shochein Bamiro Mim Hamitzei Menucha Nechon Al Kanfei HaShechina B'Malos Kedoshim B'Tahorim Kizar Harakia Mazhirim Es Nishmos Kol HaHaskaros Shel HaLayla Shel Chuli Olamam Ba'avur Shemispat Bar Haskaras Nishmasam V'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchasam Lachein Bal HaRachmim Yastireim B'Seser Kenafav Li'Olamim Yitzror B'Tzor HaChaim Es Nishmasam Adonai Yunach Lavzam Yanucha B'Shalom Mishkavasam V'Nomar Amen. Okay, in English. O God, full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and pure, who shine like the glow of the firmament. For the souls of Etta Clay, Fega Kopekin, Sue Fruhauf, Edward Gross, Yuli Chalemsky, and Shimon Shaw, in whose memory we study and pray. May the resting place be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, may the Master of Mercy shelter them in the shelter of his wings for eternity. May he bind the soul in the bond of life. Hashem is their heritage. May they rest in peace. And let us say Amen.